Hello everyone, my name is Stefano Fagnani, aka Stev, and in this tutorial I'm going to explain and demonstrate how to operate the WOV plugin by kdevices. First of all, it's important to know that even though kdevices has been known for developing Macs for live devices, WOV is an actual plugin, meaning that it can run on every VST, AU, AAX compatible DAW. And this is a key difference that's been introduced by the new Phoenix series, which includes both WOV and tap devices. So WOV starts like a tremolo, but in fact it is an amplitude envelope generator capable of creating complex modulations and volume textures, ranging from simple fades to quick transients and glitches. If we look at the interface, we can see it's full of parameters, and they help sculpting shapes, dynamics, and progressions. Also, if the UI feels a bit intimidating at first, the user can click on the button in the right corner here to reveal parameters names, which is a pretty handy feature. So, on the very top of the interface, we find a scrolling menu for presets, and a text indicator showing us the respective parameters value. We can simply click on the parameters knobs to show them up. Also, of course, moving the knobs changes the parameters showed up. Going forward toward the bottom, we find the rate, the waveform, and the depth sections. The final row allows us to activate rate quantization and stereo mode. In order to demonstrate the functionalities of WOV, I prepared this simple image called progression with long sustained sounds that make amplitude variation more evident. Also, I've mapped the volume fader to a USB controller here so I can manage it easily while we're talking throughout the video. So let's start from the depth section. The big knob on the right sets the amount of modulation over the dry signal, essentially acting as a dry-wet control. It ranges from completely unaffected dry signal to the very left and completely wet all the way to the right. Also, in this position, WOV essentially acts as a repeating gate. The knob on the left, named Silence, is meant for introducing some randomness, increasing the chance that amplitude will be 0 for some cycles. So basically, turning the knob to the right, we can introduce more and more random silence into our pattern. In the waveform section, we have control over the repeating envelope that is guiding the amplitude transitions. The knob on the left allows us to morph between an almost sine shape all the way to the left and a slightly rounded square shape to the far right. We can use the visualizer to see the shape of our waveform. Right to the visualizer, we have peak and warp parameters. The first one is essentially the attack envelope of the waveform, whilst the warp knob is controlling the length of the waveform. We can use these two knobs to shape single repetitions and make the volume changes more subtle or harsh. So the rate section is used to determine the speed at which WOV operates. With the button row buttons, we can switch between hertz or quantized fractions of a beat, of course in sync with your DAW's master tempo. Now on the right there are the key parameters that make WOV a really cool device. The first knob here is called response and sets the sensitivity with which the rate will either slow down or speed up based on the amplitude of the incoming signal, which is really cool, used with dynamic instruments such as guitars or pianos. Basically, when we move this knob, the louder the incoming signal is, the more the rate will be affected. The second knob is called variation and introduces randomized amounts of variation to the rate, ranging from half the rate to the far left and twice the rate, of course, to the far right. So both of these controls are bipolar, so here in the middle there's the zero value, and we have negative on the left and positive on the right. The last remaining part is the sequencer, which uses the sliders to set relative accents for each beat of the rate. The user can use the horizontal slider to adjust the sequence length between 2 and 8 steps, like this, and set the accents in this way, just by moving the sliders. Finally, the R+1 button is essentially an offset for the accents going to the right channel, helping to spread the stereo image wider and making the output sounding more complex. Of course, in order to use this feature, you should activate the stereo mode from the bottom row button. Also, as you can see, when switching from mono to stereo mode, these dots change as well, basically indicating that silence, variation and R+1 functionalities are affected by different setting. Whilst R+1 requires stereo to be activated, silence and variation switch from a single channel to a dual channel activity for the sake of penned textures. So this is a pretty cool way to remember the user how operations change between mono and stereo. So that's it, we've covered all the features of WOV. Have fun with it and try to experiment with different dynamics and settings. It is a really flexible device that encourages experimentation. It is really enjoyable, so I really suggest you to try it with different time bursts and dynamics and just explore this plugin. Thank you for following this tutorial and see you the next time.